Fala galera, tudo bem com vocês? Ivan aqui falando. Bem-vindo ao canal do Só PC. Galera, vamos trazer um conteúdo bônus aí do Little ou Little Roll, sei lá, como vocês quiserem. É um conteúdo bônus, espero que vocês gostem. E fortalece o canal, galera, deixando aquele like, se inscrevendo no canal, compartilhando o vídeo, deixando seus comentários. Tamo junto, é isso aí. Vamos ver, na verdade, que nós liberamos, né? Nem sei. Porra, temos só 3 coisinhas, velho. Vamos começar pelo livro de artes do Little. Vamos ver o que tem, né? Oh, a Megan. Do início. O livro, né? Existe um livro para quem quiser comprar. Por aí, propaganda de graça não vale, mas a galera vale tudo, né? Segue. Vou bem devagarinho para vocês poderem ler aí. Quem quiser ler, dá uma pausa e ler por completo, tá, galera? Cara, eu adorei demais esse jogo, amei de verdade. Muito doidão, nossa, me prendeu nele. Vou rejogar de novo, né? A gente mudar umas escolhas aí e ter mais assertividade nas questões dos comandos que surgem, né? Na gameplay, nas cenas. Cara, muito da hora. Nossa. Caramba. Fechou, galera. Vamos para o próximo bônus. Criando os demônios. Nossa.
I just saw someone in the woods. Okay, very good. We're freaked. Who's there?
Whoever you are, this isn't funny at all.
The demons are an integral part of the story of Little Hope. It's the crux of a lot of the things that happen, and that informs a large part of what we're doing. The starting point for each of the demons was the style of execution. They're based on a character that gets killed. That then informs how the character behaves, how it moves, how it sounds, and those are all brought together to give us that convincing, terrifying demon.
In order to make convincing demons, you need to ground them in nature. So what we do is we use our understanding of anatomy and our deep understanding of biomechanics and the principles of the way things move and the way things actuate, and we apply this to the demon design. We obviously start with the production design. The production design is a drowned demon, What we need to do then is look for extra reference. We have to look at stuff like autopsies. We'd look at what happens to the skin when it gets exposed to water for a long time. We have to look at creatures from underwater. We look at various types of fish. Loads of images and real-world reference helps, although it's slightly gruesome.
This particular demon we're looking at is the one that's been hung. We didn't want to show the whole of this character, and right from the beginning we said, let's focus on the areas which are the most terrifying. And so the overall silhouette of the character was to be like this twisted rope. Her limbs had coiled, and so we were exaggerating the metaphor of this hanging. 1,000 years of being trailed along the ground, it had worn away her feet, the bones being worn down, the nails being broken off. She'd been in pain for a long time. The most key of all of the elements was the face and how we framed that, and that was that broken, twisted neck, one eye remaining, a tear coming out because it's that last remains of her soul. The noose was digging into her neck, and her tongue is actually so bloated and grown that that actually became a feature for us in the game, that tongue actually becomes a grapple to get hold of some of the characters.
To animate a demon, we would start with looking at how they walk or move forward. Some of them are dragging themselves, and then also how they would attack their victims, just flesh out the layout and the choreography of it. Mocap is a big help. Obviously, it's a lot faster than keyframing from scratch, so we decided to use it as a base for some of them, and then we would layer on top of that all the characteristics that bring them to life, even though they're dead.
The Crush Demon in particular was difficult to work with because we weren't able to use motion capture footage, so that is going to be completely hand animated. So that meant we were really starting from scratch. All the other demons we did use actors' footage, so we have a lot of actors with spikes tied to them limping across the scene.
Let's get the fuck out of here!
On the Broke Demon, we asked the actor to use various props to try and achieve the sort of movement that we wanted. And I think he did a great job. It was really successful. We've had to, again, add on to that to help with the weight and the believability.
We take our initial cues for the sound of the demons from the visuals, and they look fantastic. But then we have to take the sound of the demons beyond the visuals to give them a really strong otherworldly presence. We need each of the demons to be individually recognizable whilst maintaining that uncomfortable unfamiliarity for the player. So at distance you might hear the chains clanking or the vocal screams. But when you get close up to the demons, you hear lots of detail, the cracking of skin, the creak of the chains, the breaths or the sound of the icky vomit. We really want the player to feel the breath through the sound of the demon on their face.
Angela, no!
When we're thinking about the camera work for the demons, one thing that was really at the forefront of my mind was trying not to show too much, trying not to lose all restraint, and I think that's a really easy trap to fall into with CG in general, and especially with games that you've got all these monsters that you've built and you've spent a lot of time working on, and it's really easy just to go straight to putting everything on screen. But thinking back to some classic horrors, classic monster movies, a lot of times there the directors had to use a lot of restraint and just show little bits and pieces because they didn't have that kind of budget or that kind of effect to really make it convincing. And there's something about that I really like, that I wanted to bring back to Little Hope. So when I was directing the camera team, I've asked them to show little bits, little glimpses, a clawed hand here, a shadow on the wall there, the chains rattling, whatever the key characteristics were of that demon. The interesting thing with that is that I think sometimes your imagination as a viewer fills in the blanks in a far more terrifying way than we really could. So we tried to build up that suspense, working up to this big reveal where you finally see full on in the light this thing that's been hunting you down in all its gross, horrific glory. With the demon scenes, lighting definitely had a key part to play as well. It had to work complementary to what we wanted to do with the cameras, but also there's some specific things you can do with lighting that really lent itself to this task. So one of the big ones was the use of silhouettes. The demons have really interesting form and really interesting shapes. They're very unusual, you know, these humanoid creatures all distorted, and we wanted to use that without revealing too much. So quite often we try to use backlighting, or the fog that's present all through Little Hope is a really useful tool for silhouettes, as you can have this nice separation with a brighter background and then have the creature dark in the foreground. It was a nice way to make them feel even more gross than they really were.
The Little Hope narrative is extremely multi-layered, and the demons not only represent the tortured souls of the characters, but they also represent the psychological trauma that humans can obtain through witnessing traumatic events. So when the game opens in the prologue and the main character is witnessing these traumatic events, we underscore this with really strong male Gregorian choir, which we use later in the game when the demons are attacking to really strengthen and reference that psychological trauma with the tormented souls of the characters.
Run! Now!
The broken demon's the most terrifying because of the way it moves. It's really unsettling because you can't anticipate where it's going to go next. All the limbs are breaking and it's all moving in a really erratic way. So if you were to try and escape from it, you wouldn't know where to go because it might go there or it might go over here. So that's the most terrifying in terms of unpredictability, I suppose, and having a deep effect on your psyche.
Interestingly, when you work at Supermassive, you get immune to horror. That's one thing I've definitely noticed. The powers of horror somehow get lost in me every time I'm watching a horror movie. I don't get so scared anymore just because I see this stuff every day. But doing those demon scenes, I must admit, even watching them back as they were work in progress, it was always like fairly distressing and fairly horrific. So hopefully some of that comes across in the experience for the player too.
Cara, esse jogo vocês arrebentaram, mano. De verdade. Tudo nesse jogo é perfeito, mano. Muito louco. Último bônus, a entrevista, eu acho que é isso. Como eu. Bora em entrevista, galera.
Where are we? What happened?
The bus crashed. We're okay though, just shaken up.
I don't remember being in any crash.
Well, here we are on set of Little Hope, part of the Dark Pictures anthology. Tell me about the characters you play in the game.
Yeah, very exciting. I play Andrew, who is a student on this trip to the town of Little Hope.
You know this place?
No. I mean, I don't think so. I also play Anthony and I play Abraham, all existing at different time periods in different places.
Is it tough to balance it all and to kind of jump back between these characters as you go through it?
A little bit. I've had a lot of help along the way, and we've been able to, for the most part, separate the three different guys. We have an amazing accent coach on set at all times, so she keeps me in check and puts me on the right part of the map when I stray too far.
Only the devil could create a demon who so resembles me. We do look alike, which I agree is pretty damn weird.
How tough is it for you to separate that and balance it all?
Yeah, it's interesting. Andrew, being the character that I embody for most of the time, was a little bit easier for me. I related to him naturally. He's this socially awkward, depressed student, and I certainly as a student was pretty socially awkward and repressed, so I could relate to him a great deal.
You seem uncomfortable around kids your own age.
This trip is actually my first time away from home.
Oh, we picked a real beauty.
Yeah, well, if I ever make it back, I'll sure have something to talk about.
The other character, Anthony, is slightly more immature, comes from a big family. I can also relate to that. And dealing with the family dynamic and playing that sibling friction was also something that I think a lot of people can relate to. And that was fun, another sort of element of the challenge which I really enjoyed. And then there's Abraham, who's the third character that I'm responsible for.
We have to stop this. The only madness is right here in this court.
And the nice thing that exists in all three of them is this motivation to do good, to do right. And I think all three characters I really had admiration for. They seem to be like morally adept, and it's important to respect, I think, the characters that you play, or at least identify something within them that you respect. And I respected all three of the guys that I played.
I know what must be done here.
And they're all so very different, and even the level of the accents change between them. Is that something that's challenging to navigate?
Yeah, that's been really fun for me. It's been, when playing Andrew, I've been doing a relatively neutral American accent, but we sort of base most of the action in New England, so it does lean towards the East Coast, and it doesn't take on too strong of a characterization in either direction. The vocal work for Anthony is similar to that, but because Anthony lives within the 1970s, there's been a little bit of tweaking to the accent in order to accommodate the times. And then Abraham's an entirely different accent. It's been a bit of guesswork as far as constructing that accent because there's no recordings of what people sounded like at that time. But I suppose the closest thing to it we imagine is a kind of Northern English accent. And my dad's from Yorkshire, so I've basically been ripping off what my dad sounded like when he was younger.
She talked in this really weird accent. Was that even American?
And also with the process itself is a huge, like a learning curve, like you say, with the performance capture. What's the process been like for you? Have you been able to adapt? Do you feel at home now wearing the helmet? And
yeah, it's funny. I mean, it presents a whole host of challenges. It can get a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
After a while, it can get a little uncomfortable. You never forget the first time you go for a wee wearing that headset, thinking, am I on some sort of screen somewhere in the studio right now? Can people see me weeing? But you soon get used to the headset and the pack that you're wearing. And I think the best thing you can do is try and remove that from the equation entirely and just make it about looking at the person opposite you. Some of the more physical stuff is challenging because if you do want to move around and you do want to add a physical performance to whatever facial, emotional things that are being captured, you have to be careful that the sound isn't being compromised because of your movements. But, you know, in lots of ways it's been quite freeing too. We move at a great pace. There's little repetition over the same thing. There's lots of variation, but little repetition really. And we have an opportunity to move freely about the space pretty much. We're not confined to marks and we don't have to relight every single moment. It's go, go, go. It's been 100 miles per hour and I've loved the intensity of it. It's been great.
But we're looking for our bus driver.
What?
Have you seen him?
Yeah, that's funny.
What's up with the fog outside? It's pretty weird.
Sure is a thick one tonight.
Actually, it's so thick it's stopping us from leaving.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
You're, trapped here too, then?
it's a whole different pace, I feel, than what you normally when you're setting up a scene and you shoot front to back, and then now it's kind of like you're just jumping in and you're just like stop, start, stop, start. It must be kind of refreshing in a way.
100%, yeah. You can start in the morning and by lunch you've died and come back to life 4 or 5 times, whereas on a film set you would have had to shoot for several weeks to get that material. So you do blast through a ton of content.
Run! Get the hell out of there! Look out!
Yeah, it's gonna be really cool to see yourself in a video game. It's gonna be an incredible experience too. And then now your friends and family members can like play you in a game. That must be a whole weird feeling.
Yeah, that is really weird. It's strange enough seeing my face on the screen in anything, but you're really mad and exciting, I guess, to think about being in a video game. I guess that's like a little kid's dream in lots of ways, so I feel very lucky.
It's incredible. And your friends are going to call you, but like, I killed you.
Yeah, I killed you 3 times. They're like, good to speak to you too, bud. Yeah, thanks for the call.
Would you confront your fears or would you run away?
I want to say confront my fears. After this experience, I would confront my fears. Maybe previously I would have run away.
What kind of place is this?
It's one of those things where what you think you'll do is different than what you probably actually.
In the moment, yeah, 100%.
Oh, I would confront my fears, and then you're gone.
Gone. Yeah.
And lastly, would you explore on your own or in a group?
In a group, I'd have to. One of the best things about this experience has just been the camaraderie that's developed amongst the cast, and over a short period of time, shooting at this intensity, it's bonded us together really quickly, and I've loved being part of the team. A group of us in one room on this crazy journey together, so it's all about exploring as a team.
I'm just gonna say it. This is exactly what goes down in horror movies.
Well, plus than anything in the horror genre, we know what happens when you go off on your own, right?
100%. Don't do it.
They still do it.
And they still do it. Yeah.
Let's go check out that room over there.
No, don't go check out that room.
Nope.
Don't go check out.
Or bring someone with you.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go.
All right, Will.
Tanner, thanks
a lot. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Falou, isso aí. Galera, encerrou por aqui, foi da hora. Eu gostei. Com certeza vocês também gostaram. E também vamos deixar aquele like para fortalecer. Se inscrever no canal, pode dizer que realmente gostaram, os que não são inscritos. Fora isso, galera, obrigado por estar comigo até agora aqui, nesse bônus. Um forte abraço para vocês. E nos vemos no próximo. É isso aí, valeu.